Someone asks you, "What are you doing for your birthday?" And you give that answer that apparently shocks everyone. Nothing. It's just another day. And suddenly, you're the weird one. Your friends think something's wrong. Your family says you're being difficult. And society acts like if you don't blow out candles and post a smiling photo, something inside you must be broken. But what if nothing's wrong with you, my friend? What if you're actually further along than anyone gives you credit for? Because psychologists have actually studied this in detail, and what they found says a lot more about the people who judge you than it ever says about you. Stay with me, my friend. This video was made for you. Let's start with the group nobody talks about, the ones who stopped celebrating not because they chose to, but because life taught them not to hope. In 1967, psychologist Martin Seligman discovered something that's hard to hear. He called it learned helplessness. When someone experiences repeated disappointment with no control over the outcome, their brain eventually gives up trying. Not because they're weak, because they're efficient. And birthdays, my friend, birthdays are basically a disappointment machine. Here's what the science says. Your brain runs on predictions. Neuroscientists showed that your dopamine system doesn't just respond to rewards, it responds to the gap between what you expected and what you actually got. Just imagine this. You're young, you're expecting the party, you're expecting your friends to remember, you're expecting to feel special. And when none of that happens, not once, not twice, but year after year, your brain does the math. It stops predicting the reward. It stops releasing the dopamine, and eventually you stop caring. Not because you don't want to care, because your brain decided that hoping hurts more than forgetting. So when someone says, "It's just another day," listen carefully, my friend. That sentence wasn't born from apathy. It was built from scar tissue. And the fact that they can say it calmly, that's not coldness, that's powerful armor. But not everyone who skips their birthday carries scars. The second group looks completely different on the surface. These are the people who genuinely forget their own birthday, not because of pain, but because their brain is running 17 tabs at once. Psychologists call this time blindness, and it's more common than you think. When you're deep in a project, a deadline, a life that demands every ounce of your attention, dates blur, weeks blur. When you look at your calendar, it looks less like a schedule and more like abstract art. And here's the thing, my friend. These people aren't actually avoiding their birthday. They're not suppressing anything. Their brain simply filed it under not urgent, right next to that dentist appointment they've rescheduled 4 times. Not because they don't care about themselves, because they care about so many things that one day just slips through. Sound familiar, my friend? And then there's the third group, the ones who didn't forget, the ones who aren't hurting, the ones who looked at the whole concept of birthday celebrations and just said, "I'm good." Not because they're cold, not because they're lonely, not because they're trying to prove something. They just genuinely don't need it. And if that sounds like you, my friend, here's what the science says. Psychologist Ryan and Dishi spent decades studying something called self-determination theory, and one of their core findings is this: the most psychologically healthy people are the ones whose happiness comes from within, not from external events, not from social rituals, and definitely not from a song you never asked 30 people to sing at you in a restaurant. These are the people who cracked what researcher Philip Brickman called the hedonic treadmill, that cycle where you chase the next celebration, the next milestone, the next external hit of happiness, and it never quite lands the way you hoped. These people stepped off that treadmill, my friend. They're not missing anything. They just stopped outsourcing their happiness. Think about that for a second. While everyone else is waiting for one day a year to feel special, these people cracked the code of how to feel whole on a random Tuesday. And here's the part that trips people up. When you don't need a birthday to feel valued, it makes other people uncomfortable. because it challenges their assumption that everybody needs the same things, that celebration is universal, that you should want the cake, the attention, the fuss. But you already answered that question for yourself a long time ago. You don't need a calendar to remind you that you matter. You already know everything. But not everyone arrived at this place peacefully. Let me tell you something. You're 8 years old. It's your birthday. You've been counting down for weeks. You told everyone at school. You imagined the balloons, the cake, the moment when everyone gathers just for you. And then the day comes. A huge silence. Maybe the people you were expecting didn't show up. Maybe someone forgot. Maybe the whole thing felt so much smaller than the version you built in your head. And you didn't cry about it. Not where anyone could see. You just quietly adjusted your expectations. And the next year, you expected a little less. And the year after that, even less. Here's what most people don't know, my friend. Researchers at Johns Hopkins found that our brains don't just remember painful dates, they relive the emotion every single year. They call it the anniversary effect. Your calendar moves on, your brain doesn't. That 8-year-old is still in there, just waiting. But I want you to sit with this part, my friend. Not everyone who skips their birthday is doing it from a place of strength. Psychologist Jennifer Crocker at the University of Michigan studied something called contingencies of self-worth, and she found that some people disconnect from celebrations not because they're free, but because they're afraid. Afraid that if they let themselves want it and it doesn't go perfectly, it will confirm something they already secretly suspect about themselves. So they opt out, not from confidence, but from protection. And that distinction matters, my friend, because there's a real difference between someone who genuinely doesn't need the party and someone who desperately wants it but won't admit it. So ask yourself honestly right now, is it freedom or is it fear? Only you know the answer, and the fact that you're even asking yourself that question right now already says something about you. Because maybe that's the real point. We've been taught that celebration equals caring, that if you don't make a big deal out of your birthday, something must be wrong with you. But what if we've been measuring the wrong thing all along? What if the truest form of self-love isn't throwing a party? What if it's not needing one? Maybe someone watching this right now spent their last birthday alone, not because no one cared, but because the silence finally felt like enough. If that's you, you're not broken, my friend. You belong to a quiet group of people who don't need anyone's permission to feel whole. But just in case nobody ever said this to you directly, here I am saying it. You are the permission. If this video found you today, it was no accident. If you've ever spent a birthday alone and felt completely at peace with it, write all of your feelings in the comments. I'll read every single one. And if you want more like this, subscribe. The next video might explain even more about you than this one did. Nothing was ever wrong with you. See you soon.